Okay, you want a water?
Okay, thank you very much.
Hey, Miss Mood.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Glad to have you back.
I know. I'm glad to be back. Miss Mood, you can hear okay, right?
I can, fine. And you can hear me?
Yes, perfect. Okay.
Good. Paige, what time do you have there, just so I'm sure I'm on you the same time as you?
11:52.
That, okay.
Lois?
So, right, at the finance committee, we talked about the report collection on the ID cards. Can you get with RATC there? I just sent you an email to that effect.
Oh, okay.
Need to make that high priority. We have Prisma, Lexington Medical asking questions on are their employees using the service?
Who just joined the line?
Good morning, this is Skip Jenkins here.
Hey, Mr. Jenkins.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Hey, Eric.
I'm not on the line, just letting you know.
Huh?
I'm here, but I'm not on the line.
Okay. Hey, Mr. Fergus.
Good evening.
Mr. Anderson is on.
Okay. Well, I have 12 o'clock if you all do, and I think we have a quorum, but, Paige, would you call, if I call the meeting to order of the Service Committee of the Comet, and Paige, would you, determine if we have a quorum by roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Lil Mood.
Here.
Mr. Anderson.
Here.
Mr. Fergus.
Here.
Ms. Terratio.
Here.
Ms. Gleaton. Okay, and advisory, Mr. Jenkins.
I'm here.
Mr. Coon. And Ms. Robinson. And you do have a quorum.
Okay, and could you tell me who else is on the call, please?
Yes, give me 1 second. And who is the 336 number?
Zane McGee with Davidson Floyd.
I'm sorry, sir?
Zane McGee with Davidson Floyd.
Oh, okay. Hey, Zane. Okay, so we've got Zane McGee, we have Tanisha Gibbons, and that's it.
Okay. All right. Well, it's been determined that we have a quorum, and so we'll move to adoption of the agenda. And I have a few things that I want to say before we do that, because there's some modifications I'd like to make. But before we start, I just want to call your attention to item 6C, where there are a list of things for us to discuss, and those came from, I made that list as I listened to, glad you're with us, Ms. Gleaton. I made that list of items under 6C from the recent meetings of the board and presentations to the board as service-related items that we just need to work through to a solution. So that's why they appear in that cluster. And okay. I want to move a couple of things around. Okay. One is that I'd like to move 6D up to right after 6A. Okay. Because that puts two things together where we might need to take an action. And then I'd like to move 6C up to above 6CA. That's the solutions for transit, make it the first item under 6C. And that's simply because we'll have Mr. Kuhn on the phone, and I don't want to keep him holding on the phone while we have a lengthy discussion that may not involve him. And then because after going through all the materials for today, I realized we've really got more on our plate than we can do in an hour, and I'm going to hold this meeting to an hour. And so I'd like to defer items 6, C, D, and E to the next meeting.
Okay.
All right. So can I get a motion to approve the agenda with all those changes?
Madam Chair, this is Anderson. I move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Anderson.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay.
And Mr.
I was
Ratio,
gonna say,
second.
I move to approve it with the changes that Ms. Mood just made, which, to reiterate, would leave item 6 in this order. It would go 6CA, then 6A, then 6D, then 6B, then 6C, CB. That's my motion.
All right, deferring items D and E, right, and moving 6D up to after 6A. All right, does everybody understand the changes? We can just follow through as we go. All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 And opposed? Hearing no opposition, we'll approve the agenda as modified. Thank you. I didn't hear anybody on the call from Midlands Transit Riders. Do we have anybody to speak from them? This is item 3.
Yes, I am on the call.
Oh, okay. Can you hear?
Is that Mr. Gossett?
That is me, yeah. I'm off today, so I decided to try to get to a meeting finally.
Well, great. Well, is there anything you want to say to us before we start?
No, other than I think we're just status quo right now. I'm getting the normal amount of complaints on the Facebook page, which John is often very good about pursuing. But I don't think there's anything out of the ordinary as far as day-to-day operations that people are having a lot of issues with. What they want to see in the future to happen right now, I get a lot of complaining and hemming and hawing about. But as far as normal operations, occasionally a missed bus or a dial ride didn't come. But I think things are going pretty well, all things considered, with the pandemic.
Good. Well, thank you for that. And I'll say to you, Mr. Gossett, and of course to all of our advisory members and staff on the call, that as we get into discussion, if you have something that you want to ask or have something that you'd like to, it seems relevant to what we're discussing, please just ask to be recognized, because I don't want to leave out any input that will be helpful to us. Okay. So now we are on number 4, and John, the matter is referred to the Board of Directors, from the Board of Directors.
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee, page 3 of your packet. First item is the long-term service plan for service in Richland County, and we're awaiting scheduling a workshop with the board to discuss the proposed service concept. The next one is to develop a plan for park and ride service. Once the service concepts have been refined as part of the short-range transit plan and comprehensive operational analysis, this portion of the project would begin. And then the last one is streetscape plan for Harding and Taylor. That's been done. The last piece of this project is to just construct the bus shelters, and we're waiting for those shelters to be delivered.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions for John? You know, at our last meeting, we had that excellent presentation from the planning consultants, and the committee was eager for the board to have that information before they have to come to some decisions about this plan. And so that's what the workshop will be about. We'll look forward to sharing that information with them. Okay. So that takes us to item 5, the ridership report. And I see that we don't have reports available. And in the RapDev written report, the latest data is for November. So what my question is, if this is related to some of the IT problems, we can just take those up as we under item C in that discussion, rather than have it a separate discussion. Is the main problem with the not having ridership reports being the data system?
No, there's been some errors in the ridership reports presented to us, and we've sent those to our ATP dev to correct. And we have finalized July, August, September, and October, but we have not gotten November back from them as of yet. I sent a reminder to them on Monday.
Madam Chair, can we see the
Yes,
ones?
Ron.
Can we see the months that have been finalized? Can we at least look at those?
Yes, we can present those next month.
All right,
we
so
just got those
we'll ask
back
for all the
literally
reports
within
that
about
have,
2 weeks.
we'll ask for all the reports that have been finalized to be on our March agenda. And,
Yes.
and I don't know whether we need to say a word about what this process is, but the data actually comes from, John, you might want to describe that. What do you mean when you say there are errors in the data?
So the data comes from GenFair, and
Now,
and then it gets
you've
input
got to say
again.
more than that. GenFair is, where does that come from?
bus operators putting the counts inside GenFair Farebox.
Okay. All right, so that's where that data comes from. And then,
And then it gets put into a spreadsheet.
and that's done by the contractor staff, takes what's in the data from the Farebox and puts it on a spreadsheet?
That's correct.
And then how do you determine there's an error in that?
If, for instance, the hours weren't put in properly, or the days weren't counted properly, it's things like that, because it's all formula driven.
Oh, well, I just want to be sure we're all understanding. So when you say the hours weren't put in properly, how would you know that?
You know that based on the days that were inputted into the spreadsheet.
So if there were hours beyond the usual service hours put in, or not enough, or what?
No, because the spreadsheet is formula driven, if you put the wrong days of the week, then it affects the overall calculations of the hours, which affects the calculations for passengers per hour and subsidy per passenger.
All right, so we're checking the data that's entered against a formula that says this is what would be expected.
That's correct.
Okay, does anybody have questions about that?
Ms. Mood, I have a question. This is Carolyn Gleason.
Sure.
I noticed when the passengers get on the bus, I know nobody's paying. We are not paying now, and we're riding the bus free. Okay, so each time the bus loads there, the driver is supposed to count every passenger that gets on there. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you're keeping an accurate account of that too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I
So
thought that's what
that
it was
goes
for, but I
into
just
the
wanted to be sure.
fare data, even though we're not charging fares. That's a good question.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to be sure. Okay, all right.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, then we'll look forward to seeing that those reports at our next meeting. The next item is 6A, the passenger amenities program, and Mr. McGee, are you going to be reporting for Mr. Warren?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, I know that we have your entire written report in our packet, so rather than have you walk us through that entire report, is it okay with you if we just ask some questions?
Sure. If you want to, yeah, it's going to be pretty brief either way.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with mine, and then some of the committee may have some others. That there are a lot of projects that have been completed, except they just can't be built because you're waiting for some of the supplies, the buildings, the components to arrive. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, there are
And
quite
is
a few
that
stops
just
right
a
now.
larger problem of the supply chain generally?
Yes. Yes, there's I believe it's close to 3 months lead time for the shelters once they're ordered to actually arrive.
Okay. I've heard a lot of other people who have building projects say they're experiencing delays in getting some of the materials and parts, and I just thought that might be what was happening with us too.
Madam Chair, this is Ron. I had a question.
Sure.
For Mr. Ando, I thought when you put a plan together, you told us we would end up with like 30 or 40 shelters. But I mean, I'm looking at this list plus the number of shelters I've seen around town. How many shelters are deployed at this point, and how many are on order, and how many are we going to end up with?
Eric, do you mind answering that question if you have that available?
We're actually, hello, this is Eric Harris, the Planning Development Specialist. So we are compiling that data as we speak. As it states at this very moment, we have about 25 proposed locations for our next order. And for the current order that's getting ready to come in, we have somewhere around 20 to 30 locations as well.
Okay, but
Eric, I didn't get that number. 20.
How many shelters are up?
We've constructed collectively 75 in the last 2 years.
So I guess my question is, when you gave us that plan, I didn't think the number was that high.
Are we talking the plan in 2018?
Yeah, the one you were going to try to expedite I mean, I'm thrilled. Don't misunderstand. I'm thrilled that so many shelters are up and more are coming. I didn't recall that we had the capacity to do roughly 150 shelters.
Yeah, we've gotten the funding to get us to, because the goal that the board set was 175 in 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
So we've gotten funding from the COG, our current STA funding. We've pursued CTC funding from both counties, CDBG. So we're on target to getting to 175 by the end of the 3rd year.
Okay. And my memory isn't what I thought it was. Okay, that's fantastic. I saw the shelter being constructed on Beltline, which I don't see on this list. but I could see where it's under construction, which is fantastic. Is there one on both sides of Beltline, or just there by the apartments, or are there two of them there? Or just one?
It's two.
It's two, one on either side of the road? That's fantastic. The other place, and John, I don't know where to put it in the hopper, is if y'all would take a look at the corner of Plowden and Beltline. There's a lot of people, they've kind of built a makeshift shelter kind of in somebody's yard. The corner where the bus makes a hard right. When it's going south on Beltline, it hangs a hard right onto Plowden. And that's a real popular stop.
We'll have, Davis and Floyd look into that.
Okay, thank you. That was all I had.
Okay, good. Okay. Anybody else have questions? All right. Another one that I had, I'm on page 5 of our packet under the unresolved issues, where it says that all stops on North Main Street that fall within the current penny projects have been put on hold by Richland County. Are you saying that they'd have to finish the road work before we can restart the erecting the shelters? Is that what that means?
Correct. Yes, we had, I believe, 5 shelters that we had submitted to the DOT. The DOT was kind of had, give us verbal. They were okay with the site plans, but they just wanted to coordinate with Richland County since that project was active. Basically, Richland County has told us they're not going to really improve anything until they're finished with their project. So
well, that makes sense. Wouldn't want to put shelters up and then have them damaged by the rest of the work that has to be done. That makes sense.
Right.
Okay, and my last one. Go ahead.
It says it in there. I believe it's going to be spring or summer of this year that they would be finishing that project. So we'll submit them back to DOT at that point. Great.
Okay. And then my final question is the first bullet under pending items, where it says that on the number 466 Edmund Branch stop is ready for construction and awaiting comment approval for construction to begin. Is that something that we need to follow up on?
I believe Eric can verify this for sure, but I believe that those have been approved. And this is just kind of, we turned this report in last week, so it's kind of like a snapshot as of last week. But I believe those have maybe even moved forward since then.
Yes,
okay,
this is Eric Harris. This is Eric Harris again. Those stops have already been.
All right, so that has been approved, so that won't be pending now. Okay, well that's good. That was one of the things I thought we might have to do an action on. All right, anything else for Mr. McGee or for the staff on amenities? Okay, all right. Then I'm gonna ask that then we move to what was item 6D. And now, and take it in that order, and that's the Route 92X future. And John, would you just give us a thumbnail update on that?
Yes, this was discussed at the Finance Committee earlier this morning, and they deferred action pending what the Service Committee elects to do. Route 92X is a specially funded route that was created in January of 2019 to connect Commerce Central with Amazon and Nephron along the 12th Street extension. The route was initially funded 4 ways at 25% each of the net operating costs. In February of 2019, Amazon dropped out of the funding due to concerns that they didn't feel they were getting value from the route. Nephron continued to fund the route for 2 fiscal years thereafter, and on January 21st, they gave notice that they will not renew a partnership with the Comet due to lack of performance data to validate the effectiveness of their employees riding this route. Based on the upcoming fiscal year 21-22 budget, if the costs continue to be borne by Richland and Lexington counties, staff is recommending a 50-50 split with the contribution of FTA Section 5311 funds to compensate the 50% match. And the reason why we're recommending this split is this is a unique route when it was created, that 95% of the route miles are in Lexington County. However, 85% of the boardings is from Richland County. Over the course of those 2 fiscal years, on page 43 is the route performance. And the route performance has been very stellar compared to some of our other express routes that are operating in the system, which is why staff would recommend continuation of this route absent Nephron funding. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Burgess.
on this funding, I'd like to make a motion that we move that funding and that issue on to the full board and let the board send this issue back.
You mean not take any not do any further discussion of it now,
Right, just send
or
it.
do just take a you think you want us to make a recommendation to the board that they refer this to the service committee for
After discussion at the board, because this may be one that the board wanted to delete.
well
See, I keep hearing about funding, and this one's one that was leveraged with Richland County funds. So maybe the board want to look at that.
So your main concern is that if where we are doing a split in the funding of one that a route that runs Richland and Lexington, that the board's fully supportive of that split between the two.
That's correct.
All right. So now correct me if I'm wrong, John, but this route's been operational now for what, 3 years?
2.5 fiscal years.
And the funding has always been divided between Richland and Lexington, but we've also had initially contributions from Amazon and Nephron. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so the split between Richland and Lexington is not a new thing.
It is not. This
Okay.
was approved by the board in October 2018.
All right. Given that, Mr. Burgess, you think we still need to delay making any recommendation to the board?
Yes, because all it does is increase the funding from Richland County.
It does, and it would increase. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and the funding leverage for the grant money was Richland County funds. So it's total Richland County funding and grant things. So the board need to look at that. We probably got several of those type routes floating around.
All right. I want to. All right. I'm going to. So do I have a? So you're making a motion that we refer this to the board for their approval of the use of Richland County funds before we proceed?
Now, I'm saying the board should have an understanding of it, and the board can send it back to service, but the board needs to understand that funding part of it.
Okay. All right. Just I'll tell you one of the things when I report to the board from the service committee that I will want them to know, and for the new committee members too, that when we began this route, which actually was requested by Amazon several years before we could get it started, but then when we began, Amazon, as John reported, really it only ran about 3 months before they decided they didn't want to support it. So, I mean, those of us who've been around starting new routes for a while know that you can't really see what the impact of a route is going to be in 3 months. But in any case, that was Amazon's decision to pull out very early. The other part of that is that is Nephron's recent decision. If you look on page 42 of your packet, the chart that shows that we've not shown any ridership for Nephron for since last April. There's zeros there. And here's my understanding of the difficulty there. Since we've been operating with under the COVID restrictions and fare free, what's happened is that there may have been some, and because we've made the changeover in the contract, that there may have been some miscommunication with drivers about counting, how to go about counting people who are Nephron riders. And I understand from John that, you know, people who get on that are going to Nephron hold up their cards in the back, their Nephron IDs, and then the driver can count. But as you can see, what's happening is that those counts have not made it into the information, and so Nephron's making a decision not to support the route based on the fact that it doesn't show any ridership to Nephron. Now, here's my thinking. I think there's some, I mean, we can't go back and fill in past months, but I think we would still want to know how many riders are going to Nephron, because I believe I would hold out the possibility that they may want to return to supporting the route if they see that it actually is providing service to them. And it seems to me that one of the easiest ways to do that would be to, when the driver stops at Nephron, just count the number of people who get off. And then that would relieve the driver from having to watch and try to count every time somebody gets on, and if they forget to hold up their ID card, you know, that process is fraught with opportunities to drop the ball. So I was just thinking if we could begin, and Mr. Bell and those of you from RapDev who are on the call could make sure this is workable. Is it beginning right away if the driver, when he stops at, or he or she stops at Nephron, if they would just count and enter the number of passengers that get off at Nephron, or in the afternoon, the number of passengers that get on at the Nephron stop. I think we can begin to build that ridership data again. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes.
So we could go ahead and start that right away, even though they are not now, as of this moment, they've decided not to participate in the funding. We can go ahead and initiate that recounting and fill in that data.
Yeah, we've already.
Yeah, because I want to point out what John has said, and that is, if you look at that chart down at the bottom, that the ridership is really very good. I mean, look across that at the very bottom, the passengers per trip, 19, 35, 17.50, 20. I mean, those are really very good numbers for our express route. And the fact that our fare box ratio is extraordinarily high, because people are paying to ride the bus even if their employers are not participating in the funding. So I think I certainly don't want us to lose both a popular and very useful route. But anyway, I'll do a summary of this when I report to the board. If we want to take act on Mr. Fergus's motion, that we take this back to the board for their consideration in reference to the service committee. That was your motion, Mr. Fergus?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
All right, Ms. Gleaton seconds. Is there any further discussion? Okay, you ready to vote? I think let's take a roll call vote on this, please, Paige.
Okay. 1 second, please. Ms. Nude?
Yes.
I'm sorry, hold on a second. Make sure I get everybody. Mr. Anderson?
No.
Ms. Ratio?
No.
Mr. Fergus? Ms. Layton?
Yes.
That's it, so it is. Mr. Burgess, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, so
I
you're
said
voting
yes.
yes. Okay, we have a tie.
Well, it must be a 3-2.
Oh, wait.
The three yes,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, 3-2. I apologize.
All right, so we'll make this, we'll take this, report and a request for the board to make a decision on this, whether to refer it back for implementation, for funding.
All right.
All right,
Madam Chair,
Yes,
before we move on, I noticed that we've have deleted the motion period from this, but I'd like to make another motion
all right,
that we eliminate all soda cap connector routes until the end of the pandemic, because all we're doing is running empty buses all over Columbia that we are getting no profit or PR out of.
well, I know that there are a lot of steps in between our passing a motion like that and being able to implement, so, but I hear your motion. And is your motion that we take that recommendation to the board?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That would be the route. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it because I noticed the same thing, Mr. Burgess.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, would you call? Yes.
Sorry. This is Allison. You know, that sounds like a very concrete and sort of a big decision. Could or should we amend the motion to for it to be? Would the maker of the motion accept a friendly amendment or a friendly adjustment to that motion that we have staff consider the implications of discontinuing the soda cap and then come back with options for us? Because it may be that possibly, one of the routes or something could still run, but maybe not all of them.
That's what I would do.
But
Would that be
pretty reasonable.
acceptable?
Pretty reasonable.
All right, we can do that. We can do it one of two ways. You can introduce a substitute motion, or you can ask the maker of the original motion to amend the motion to say that.
Well, as a point of order, Madam Chair, we can't make any substantive action other than refer it back to the board because it hasn't been on the agenda.
Okay.
That's right. That's right. The only action would be to recommendation to the board.
Right.
I don't have my Robert's Rules of Order in front of me, but I think if you make a substitute motion, we can vote on that, and then if depending on how that comes out, we can go back to the original motion, or we can vote on the original motion and then make a second motion if you need to.
Sure, I can make that as a substitute motion, that we instruct staff to look at the implications of discontinuing the soda cap routes, or look into alternatives to or options for partially discontinuing it.
And that's for the duration of the pandemic?
Yes, that would be throughout the pandemic.
Okay. Mr. Burgess, would you accept that substitute motion?
If it's all being referred back to the board, we'll get a more in-depth discussion at the board level.
So we'd be making that recommendation to the board.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
All right. And then what's likely to happen there is that they will assign it to a committee. So that's what happens at the board. All right. Are you ready to vote on the substitute motion?
Yes.
All right, Paige?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Mood?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Teratio?
Yes.
Mr. Fergus?
Yes.
And Ms. Gleason?
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
All right, so we'll put that on the, part of my report to the board at its, next meeting. Thank you. All right, we're ready then to go back to 6B, the university service update. Mr. John?
Yes, just a quick update. January 11th, university service went back into full session. Minor reroutes on the Route 20 to the spring format, which that route goes to Union. Other than that, ridership is a bit low on those routes just because of the pandemic and many of the students doing classes online. And we continue to work through any operational challenges with our contract in relation to the service. Staff is meeting with the university on a monthly basis just to have conversations and make sure that service is meeting their expectations.
Okay, and I noticed in the RapDev report that the supervisor for the university services is in training now. Mr. Bell, do you have anything to add to that report?
Good afternoon, Ms. Boone and members of the board. This is Joe. Yes, the USC operations supervisor is currently out in the field. He's working. However, we're just waiting for him to complete his pass his CDL test, so that way he will be CDL certified. He went and attempted his test, and he hit a couple of cones. So they scheduled him for a retest. But the USD supervisor that we have in place is out in the field monitoring service and pull-out and assigning tablets and other devices to the operation.
You know, I was having trouble hearing you, but if everybody else could hear you just fine, I won't make you repeat all that.
I could barely hear him either, Mr. Moon.
Could you just? I'm sorry, Mr. Bell, but would you just say that again, please?
Mr.
I apologize. This is Bruce. I'm actually don't have the information in front of me, but Joe is going to provide that answer for you.
Oh, was that Joe I was listening to? I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yes, Ms. Boone, that was me.
Okay. Would you tell us again, please, Mr. Sanchez?
Sure. That's Jeremiah. Jeremiah Wohler is the USD ops supervisor, and he's currently out in the field monitoring the service, even checking especially the major time points such as park-based department being on site. He's been in communication with Ms. Green with Kenyatta over at the university. They communicate, I believe, daily or every other day. They communicate with one another. He took his CDL test, and during his testing, he hit a cone, and they failed him. So he has to take his retest. So that's what he's going to do next week. And I know for sure that he'll pass and be fully credentialed regarding having his CDL. But currently he's out in the field. He's activating and handing out tablets to the USD operators to ensure that they're showing up on transload. In the event those tablets aren't showing up on transload, whoever's closest, either, an existing fixed route operations supervisor, or Jeremiah himself will, meet the operator and either do a restart or a reset of the tablet, so that way it's tracking properly. But,
Okay.
currently he's out in the field.
Okay, good. All right, does any of the committee have questions for either John or Mr. Sanchez or Mr. Bell? I think that noise I'm hearing is just background noise. That wasn't a question, was it?
Yes, ma'am, that's background.
Okay, all right. So I'm not hearing any questions. I did, John, you said that you're meeting monthly with the university. Does RapDev have a representative that goes, do you all go together to those meetings with the university?
We haven't started it yet. We're getting ready to start that. We've made that request for monthly meetings. Yes, our RATP Dev will be invited to join us.
That's great. Okay. All right. So we're through with the 6A, the university service. All right. So let's move on to the 6C, and I'm going to skip down to the solutions for transit and data analytics C, so that we can hear. This is well, John, you might want to give us a little background before Mr. Kuhn joins us on the line or speaks on the line, just to remind the committee that what solutions for transit does in our system.
Madam Chairman, do you mind if we could defer this to next month, if that's okay?
Sure. I don't have any objection to that.
I can talk about the data analytics portion, but then solutions for transit, they'll be able to present next month, if you'd like to hear directly from them. Do you want me to just go ahead and talk about data analytics?
That'll be fine.
All right. Page 16 of the packet. In the past, our previous contractor had a series of systems that they provided to the Comet to track data. However, the Comet didn't own or control those systems, so we had to rely on the contractor to share that information with us. While we were undergoing the procurement for a transit operations contractor, we obtained quotes from 2 providers to give us data analytics, Solutions for Transit and TransTrack. And ultimately, we ended up with Solutions for Transit. The intent of Solutions for Transit is to be a data repository and to hold all of the operational data related to the performance of the Comet Transit system. And their system has a series of checks and balances where they reconcile various information sources and compares the information from those information sources to ensure data accuracy. In the case of operations, ridership from GenFare ends up going into Solutions for Transit, as well as the miles reported on the driver vehicle inspection report. We also track customer complaints in the system. We track safety incidents related to accidents and passenger accidents on the vehicles. We track miles between road calls in the system, and that's data that comes from the maintenance module. And we also track on-time performance as it ingests data from Trapeze and Clever devices. So that's the system in a nutshell.
Okay. So as a data repository, and they do some the analysis. And so when you say to us that we have accurate data, you're talking about reconciling the data that gets put in, and that's the system that does that.
That is correct.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions about that? John, you want to comment on how well that's going, and could the RapDev representatives want to have anything to say at that about this?
I'll have Tanisha, she's the person that really works with Solutions for Transit. Tanisha, you want to comment on your use of the system?
My use of the system, can you hear me? It's Tanisha.
Yes.
My use of the system is pretty easy, pretty accurate for use. As we look at the data is more of scheduled data, and by FTA and the contract, the RATP Dev has to put in actual data. We have to report actual data to NTE. So what I'm noticing is there's more scheduled data than actual data, which is revenue hours, run times, starting in mileage that we're getting. So the system pretty much is accurate as long as errors are corrected in a timely fashion, if there are any errors. But what we're noticing from the contractor that we're getting is scheduled and not actual.
Madam Chair, this is Ron.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I know we've talked a lot about this over the last few weeks or months, and years actually. So let me get this straight. So we're converting to this, or we have this?
We have this.
Okay.
We've had this since June of 2020.
Okay. And then what other, I know that the data that it feeds into it comes from multiple places. Is that what we're replacing?
No, we're not replacing those systems. We're integrating those systems into this data management system so that when we're getting our data, instead of pulling it from multiple reports, we're pulling it from one system.
So when is that integration scheduled to be complete?
So that integration has already been done.
Okay.
And that was done back in July.
Okay. So then why is it, so I'm confused. So does that include the farebox data?
The farebox data integrates into Solutions for Transit, yes.
Okay. So all of our data problems are just operational at the beginning of the system. Basically, people are not entering it where it's supposed to be.
That is correct.
Correct.
I got you. Okay. And so I guess for my part, but I mean, it's not a motion per se, Lil, but what I would like them to do is come back with a plan to address. I'd like a plan put in front of us to get it where we both. Two pieces to the plan. One is to go back and correct what we need to correct over the last 9 months. And then second is a plan to get it correct going forward. I don't really need all how the sausage is made. I just, at this meeting, I think a written plan that says, okay, we all agree this is how we're going to move through and resolve this. I think that's all anybody really wants. That's all I want, I should say.
I agree.
Okay, and so the fact that we'll be looking at some of the results of that integration in terms of the ridership data would give us at our next meeting a way to both consider what that plan looks like, from John and the RapDev folks together, and then where we are with that in terms of what it looks like with the output data. And ridership being one of the examples. Is that?
No, what I'm saying is, so it sounds to me like there's two problems. One is It sounds like the integration is done, but in the process of the integration, and this is normal when you integrate data systems, data doesn't always land where it's supposed to and doesn't always show up correctly. So we're gonna have to scrub everything from the transition to this point to get it all to work. Somebody's gonna have to sit down and get it all squared away, okay? The second thing is we've got to fix the problems with the people inputting the data at the very beginning so we don't continue to replicate bad data, in other words. So the plan needs two parts. Obviously, RapDev is the one doing most of this, so they ought to be the ones working with, but I mean, it should be something that's straightforward to explain and that our staff agrees with it can be implemented it should have a timeline with it. I'm reasonable and don't expect that tomorrow everything's going to be fixed. I understand some of this is going to take some time to straighten out.
Okay, and John and Mr. Bell, do you all understand what Ron's asking for?
Yes, I sure do. Yes, I sure do, ma'am. Appreciate the the opportunity to be able to speak today. I know that there's been a lot of talk regarding SFT, and I know on our end we've put forth dedicated staff to try and resolve some of the challenges. I do believe that there needs to be a meeting of the minds in order to rectify what is the difference between manual input and automated input. There are some inherent challenges with the system that I think can be resolved over time, but right now it definitely calls for a meeting of the minds to be able to accomplish what the agency and the board would like to see happen.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't think we need to get in the middle of the meeting of the minds. I just think you guys need to sit down and come up with a plan then, that's reasonable and has timelines that everyone considers achievable, and then bring that back to us next month. Is that something everybody could do between now and then?
Agreed.
Okay. Okay. And am I hearing your agreement on that too, John?
Yes, we've been wanting to have this meeting, and we've just been awaiting RACP Dev to have this meeting, so we will send another request for that meeting and make that happen.
Well, I hear more than willingness. I hear some eagerness for that to happen. So, so we'll look forward to the outcome of that at our next meeting. Good. Okay. So, so we're done now with 6C. And we'll carry over anything from Solutions for Transit from Mr. Kuhn at our next meeting. And we in the process of developing that plan, we may, John, you and I'll talk before the next meeting agenda is formed, but we may or may not need to hear from them. I'm not sure about that, but depending on what you all can put together, you and Mr. Bell. All right, so we'll move to 6CA, on-time performance, and this takes us into the world of clever devices and translock.
All right, so in relation to the on-time performance, the contract discusses two metrics for on-time performance, one for the fixed route system and one for the paratransit system. The fixed route system uses clever devices presently, and the goal is 85%. We define as an on-time trip based on the buses departing 0 minutes early to no more than 5 minutes late. The current clever device system, which is called digital recorders, which is really a system that Clever Devices bought back in 2012, basically tracks on-time performance based on the time point of when a bus through GPS passes that point. And then it generates a report at the end of the month that tells us collectively what the system is performing. Challenges that create that system to not accurately report are the following. Either one, the bus operator doesn't log in. Two, a bus operates on a route that has not been programmed with the most current data. Or three, the digital recorder, the DR600 or the DR700 is just not working for whatever reason. And this system has been in place since 2010, and the most recent system was purchased in 2017 with the fleet of the 31 buses that were delivered. So I understand our contractor has been working with Clever Devices to mitigate some of those issues that are happening. We just got report yesterday that 50 of the 58 buses have been updated with the most recent programming. Once the balance 8 get updated, we're hoping that we should start to see some more accurate reporting, provided that drivers are logging into the system and provided that the DRs are working on the buses. Before I go into paratransit, are there any questions on the fixed route side?
No,
Well,
I think, Madam Chair, may I?
yes.
This falls in the same category as the other. I mean, I don't need to know all the gory details. Y'all need to go, you and our staff and the RepDev folks need to come up with an achievable plan, something that both parties agree can be done, and bring it back to us. And then, with achievable timelines. I mean, I get it. You don't have on-time performance because the data, the equipment that collects the data doesn't work or hasn't worked. And there's a bunch of reasons why. It sounds like we're moving in the right direction. So let's figure out, okay, where's the goal line? How are we going to get to the goal line? And how long is it going to take to get to the goal line and get back to us in a month? I mean, can everybody, that's my opinion.
Okay, well, and I'm looking at the report that we got from RapDev. I'm on page 71 of our packet. And Mr. Bell, you can correct me, but on this page that's on performance measure reporting about the weekly scheduled meetings with Clever, it looks like that series of bullet points are really the kind of elements that need to be examined with both the folks who the technical people, but also with the Comet staff and with the RapDev staff, and come up with some solutions to these, or some strategies for each one of these bullets to resolve that. Am I reading that report correctly?
Actually, you are, ma'am, and thank you. I will tell you, I think the transition that the agency has chosen to go to with strategic mapping, I believe John and his team has started to address a lot of the challenges that we've had with Clever. And so although we're still dealing with Clever, working with Clever, the information that we're providing is obviously getting us prepared for that transition to strategic mapping. And I think there will most likely be a very strong, considerable improvement with the utilization of strategic mapping. Sorry, John, I didn't want to speak on your behalf, but I felt like that was a good transition piece.
So what happens when we go to strategic mapping is that we won't be dealing with Clever anymore?
That is correct. When we went out to bid for a new ITS system, we bought a system that integrates with multiple things on the buses, and we needed to replace Clever as well as other Transloc and other systems that just wasn't giving us the satisfactory performance that we were looking for.
Okay,
so that transition is going to start in March. I don't think, but we should be fully integrated. I'm anticipating by April.
Okay, so we'll start in March, but complete by April. That transition, and the kinds of things that are on the list on page 71. For example, look at the last bullet where it says review time points. How are they established? Where are they? How many are there? If stops are not placed properly, then the result is an inaccurate reading. If the stop is a time point, if every stop is a time point, there may be too many. So those questions will be resolved in the transition to strategic mapping?
I will tell you that based on what's there, we've already, I think these are questions I'm presuming RATP Dev has of us. So yeah, we will work with them to answer those questions.
Well, it's on the report. It's what they've been trying to deal with in scheduled meetings with Clever. But since Clever will be out of the picture, I just want to be sure that those get addressed in whatever the new system is, the new strategic mapping.
Yeah, when we have that meeting with their team, we'll give them responses to these questions.
Okay.
Because some of these questions are historical, and we'll explain the process of like how time points were established. All the time points are shown in our bus schedules, and how many of them
Okay.
are there are shown. So yeah, we'll answer these questions.
You'll be looking at that. Okay. So then that would be, could you just give us an update at the March meeting of where you are in that transition process?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have questions or that you want to address there? Okay. Well, let's see. Okay. Well, we're at 1:00, and we had agreed to defer C, D, and E, and so the only other thing on the agenda is the report from RapDev. But Mr. Sanchez and Mr. Bell, we've kind of dipped into that report all through the meeting. So, is there anything that stands out in your report that you'd want to call to our attention? Anything in addition?
No, Ms. Booth.
You think we've covered everything? Okay. All right. Well, is there anything else that we need to have come before the board? Before the committee. If not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I move to adjourn.
Is there a second? I'll second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. And opposed, no. Hearing no negatives, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Ms. Mood.
Thank you.
Thank you.